Dave, I'm so sorry. I missed you because I didn't have my sound on.
We're ready to go.
Oh, great. Good, good. Well, thank you all very, very much. And we're going to begin our meeting. And let me just say to the public, the reason we're starting our meeting late is we were having some technical difficulties. We very much wanted to make sure that the public could participate and that we had a tool for making sure that we were properly preserving the meeting as well. So with that, I'm going to call the Hate Prevention and Inclusion Task Force meeting to order. And I'm going to ask Michelle, who I understand is our clerk today, if she can call the roll.
Oh, I'll be your clerk today, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you. Great, Dave. Thank you.
Co-Chairperson Chavez.
Here.
Co-Chairperson Esparza.
Here.
Member Lee.
Present.
Member Boyarsky.
Present.
Thank you. Member Lori Smith. I believe she is logged in. We'll come back. Member O'Neill.
I'm here. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Jeff Smith is absent. Member Narayan.
Present.
Thank you. Member Berg. Member Washburn.
Present.
Member Dewan.
Present.
Member Armeline. Member Appel.
Here.
Member Yeager.
Here.
Member Estremera. Member El Janati.
Here.
Member Conda.
Present.
And one more time for Sheriff Smith. I believe Sheriff Smith is signed on, but is not responding. Asked to unmute. Okay, once we have confirmation that Sheriff Smith is in attendance, we will count her as being present. Thank you, Madam Chair. You do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I'm going to first go to the public, our public comment item, see if there's any member of the public that wishes to speak to an item that is not on the agenda this afternoon. We have one public speaker. We'll give each public speaker 2 minutes.
One moment, please, while we get the timer up.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Isan. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isan Katir, and I'm the California Advocacy Director of the Hindu American Foundation. And I'd like to voice our support of the resolution in agenda item number 6, recommending support for California Assembly Bill 1947. As a sponsor of AB 1947 and part of a coalition of groups advocating for this legislation that will better protect all communities from hate, we respectfully request the committee to approve the resolution and recommend it to the full Board of Supervisors for consideration. As you may know, there are 3.2 million Hindu Americans across the nation and over 500,000 here in the state of California. And we're also home in California to over 120 Hindu temples and religious centers. And despite this significant presence and many contributions of the community, Hindu Americans still face significant stereotypes, misconceptions about their religious beliefs. And according to a recent survey by Pew Research, Americans as a whole know little about Hinduism, and many that do have negative impressions of Hindu Americans. So we've been targets of bullying, discrimination, hate speech, and bias-motivated crimes. And according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation Hate Crime Statistics Report, crimes targeting Hindus are on the rise, as evidenced by the 8 anti-Hindu hate crime incidents reported in 2019 and the 11 incidents in 2020. And Hindu phobia, defined as a set of antagonistic, destructive, and derogatory attitudes and behaviors toward us, are also on the rise. So we thank you for listening, and we hope to work together to combat hate crimes across the Hindu American community. Thank you.
That concludes our request to speak.
Thank you. I'm going to conclude the public comment portion, and I'm going to just, for colleagues, this item is item 6, and it will be discussed at that time. I see one panelist with their hand up. No, I don't. Okay. So we'll now go to item 3, and this is our consent calendar and changes to the agenda. And colleagues, we have a very kind of a meaty agenda, so I'm going to do my best to move us through all of this. And but we have our consent calendar, which is item 7, which is the accepting a resolution declaring acceptance of having a state of emergency that allows us to continue to have these meetings in a hybrid fashion, and approval of our minutes from October 22nd and December 10th meetings. May I have a motion for the consent calendar?
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Member Esparza, a second from Member Lee. I'm going to go to the public to see if there are any comments on the consent calendar. Seeing none, I'm going to go back to the board to see if there are any comments or questions. I see none. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
Co-Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
Co-Chairperson Esparza.
Yes.
Member Lee.
Yes.
Member Boyarsky. Member
Yes.
Boyarsky, thank you. Member O'Neill.
Yes.
Member Narayan.
Yes.
Member Washburn.
Yes.
Member Dewan.
Yes.
Member Appel.
Yes.
Member Yeager.
Yes.
Member El Janati.
Yes.
And Member Konda.
Yes.
And it looks like Sheriff Smith is back in. Sheriff, your vote on the consent calendar?
I also, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all. We're going to now move on to item 4. And item 4 is a report from the San Jose State University Research Foundation relating to recommendations to address hate crimes throughout the county. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Dr. Wang Lao to present. And then what I want to do is just frame it up a little bit. I see that we have a lot of presenters, so I'm just going to ask that we have Dr. Wang and Dr. Luna, Katie, and Maribel. So this is about a 10-minute presentation, colleagues, and then we're hoping to leave a nice chunk of time for us to be able to discuss it. So Kathleen, do I turn it to you?
Yes, and I will try to go as quickly as I can, so.
And
okay.
are the other folks presenting as well? That I just named or no? Okay,
Supervisor
that's
Chavez,
great.
we have actually item number 5, which dovetails really nicely with Dr. Wang Lao's
I see.
presentation.
And,
Yes,
and my staff was just saying you're available for questions, and please
That's
read
right.
your notes, Cindy. Okay, I'm with you now. All right, thank you.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you, co-chairs Chavez and Esparza, and task force. Grateful to be here today to present an overview of the report. You received the written report at length, and then here is the overview with some of the highlights of some of the priority recommendations and different levels of recommendations. So just want to remind you of the timeline of the project. We are now at the bottom at February 2022. You may recall that we had in December our last meeting where we received feedback. And then we worked on the report given the feedback that we got from the meeting, as well as submitted to us after that. There's a total of 36 recommendations. There's a range of recommendations. Want to remind you of the charge to the task force of the areas that we were covering, as well as the findings from the stakeholder and affinity groups. And this is just a reminder of the different affinity groups that were there, as well as the different working groups. So when we look at the areas, you'll see that we had of the numerous recommendations, there are 6 that are for addressing hate crimes, violence incited by hate speech, and then new and existing legislation on gender and sexual orientation based hate crimes, as well as other gender and sexual orientation recommendations. Firearms accessibility, hate crimes, and law enforcement had 7. Pathology of hate and hate crimes, looking at the root cause and programming and initiatives that address that, are 5. School-based programs to promote change are 3. And then some of the school-based recommendations actually also are in, or there are additional ones in the last group, which is the affinity groups, people with disabilities, Jews, Muslims, and youth. And so of those, 3 of those are also school-based. So there are high priority items in the report. One is the warm line system, high investment, high effort, but also has a high impact. And there are some, I'm sure we'll hear about this later, but there are some existing practices or resources that are already in use that could be used for that. The next one is make data on hate incidents and crimes public, transparent, including invisible populations. This one came up over and over again in all of the stakeholder groups, and that was really about not necessarily just what the law tells us we should know, but also what other indicators or other types of data could help suggest for us what types of crimes or what types of hate incidents are occurring in different populations. So they're difficult to capture, but the desire is to have some sort of analytic, even if it's an estimation, but some really research-based analytic, even if people are not at this point reporting because they're grossly underreported. The next is support Santa Clara County ordinance that bans sale or possession of ghost guns and parts. And then the last one, engaging communities of practice to build Santa Clara County capacity across sectors to reduce hate. And so these would be not general hate communities of practice, but for specific communities. So it could be on people with disabilities, could be on the Black community, could be on different religious communities, et cetera. And so this is something that would be medium to high impact. There could be partnerships with all of the local higher ed institutions in the county as well, to take some of that load, and also to use experts and facilitators from those institutions as well to help carry some of the load for the county to do that work. Level 1 recommendations are those with lower to medium effort and high impact. So county supported block parties and community events that bring people together to fight hate. Those are sort of low in some ways, need people to organize it, need groups to participate, but the impact is medium to high. Additional detective assigned to illegal gun trade and monitoring of hate speech. That requires funding, of course, and personnel and training. Again, we're looking at having some additional capacity to collect data and information. Provide consultation or referrals on target hardening that's already occurring for some of our key religious institutions in the Santa Clara County, not necessarily all of them, but we should do something more systematic. Segment work in terms of potential to move participants' attitudes away from hate. And that is really just kind of educating as sort of protocols or frameworks, so that the county's work is really thinking about how are we moving people, what group are we actually targeting in terms of their attitudes, so that you can sort of make sure that you're spreading out the work in terms of levels. Next one is communication campaigns, low in terms of effort in some ways, and then that has a medium to high impact. And so it's looking at branding, communication campaigns against hate. Next one is local law enforcement agencies adopt post-model senior and disability victimization policies. And the next two are establish a Jewish network resource for education and training, as well as establish a Muslim network resource for education and training. After that, level 2 and 3 recommendations have a long runway, and the effort is medium to high, the impact is medium to high. And so they have a long runway, meaning they're not going to be done in 6 months, or that they're really long term. And so one of them, I think, is that's priority, but also long term, is build a comprehensive hate intake process for people with disabilities that includes interim support care. So that is something that is really important, because the underreporting for people with disabilities who are abused or excluded, and more importantly, have been victims of violence, often occurs with caretakers or medical providers or family members. And so those people with disabilities are really dependent on those people that they might report against. And so it makes it prohibitive for people to report, because their very survival or their everyday ability to interact in society depends sometimes on these caretakers. And so just having a group that comes together long-term to think about how do we do that in order to provide interim care, so that in the interim, while things are being investigated or support is being provided, people actually are able to be safe. Pilot a community practice on restorative justice, develop resources for the trans community led by the trans community, go extensively beyond race and ethnicity and anti-hate training, and then widen understanding of protocols and preventions in schools to treat cyber stalking, cyber harassment, and revenge porn as hate, and to vet educational materials that contain a lot of victim blaming and misogyny, particularly for young women, and a lot of the, for example, like revenge porn education prevention. And so the recommendations range from addressing the root causes of hate and then structural resources, right? So structural change and systemic things. And so it's important as the task force is looking at making and selecting and maybe improvising, and innovating recommendations, that you really look at sort of social norm moving and doing a lot of that educational stuff, but you also need to look at structural practices and resources. And some of these address some and some address both. Most of them address probably in one of these two areas. So again, just to remind that there is research on the root causes of hate, that there are people that are persuadable and movable. And so as you're looking at recommendations, you want to make sure that you're understanding that there are very specific root causes of underreporting of hate that are specific to different communities. And so keep that in mind as you're making recommendations, that it's not sort of a one size fits all in terms of how we look at underreporting as occurring, or what are some of the barriers to underreporting. And it's not enough, again, just to say that we should be less prejudiced, right? Or that we should just learn, because again, we need to look at the structural practices that reinforce sometimes some of the norms and beliefs that we have, as well as looking at education. And this is just a list of the things that the Research Foundation group has done.
Kathleen, did you think you had slides up?
Oh no, gosh, I am so sorry.
Yeah, what I would recommend is that, if maybe you can just bring us to the slide you're on.
I am so sorry.
It's up now. We got it.
Yep,
you.
that's totally my fault. So let me just, I won't go over them, but I will let you just look at them.
Yeah, and we do have them in the packet. I mean, for
Right.
folks who went online.
I apologize. I'll move it back to the the high priority slide, and then the next one, to give you a moment to look at it. Again, my apologies.
No problem. And what slide are you on now?
So now I'm just at the end, just covering what
What you did? Okay.
yeah, what we did. Yeah. Okay, so that concludes the presentation. Again, apologies for not showing the slides.
No problem. We did have them available to us. Thank you. What I'd like to do, colleagues, if it's okay with you, is because the next item actually addresses one of the recommendations, is it all right if we hear the next item and then we can discuss them together? Are folks comfortable with that? Okay. And I'm going to let public speakers know if they'd like to speak to items 4 and 5, they can do it right after this presentation. Dr. Luna, can I turn it to you?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. So Maria Martinez will provide just a brief overview of the report, and we would be happy to answer questions. This is an overview of how we might implement actually a warm line and an education campaign that connects the two related to hate crimes and hate incidences in the county. So with that, I will turn it over to Maribel.
Good afternoon, chairpersons, task force members, and public. Here's just a quick presentation slide deck that focuses on these two particular strategies of the hate incident reporting warm line and the education campaign. In a report, we presented two options, one that is a DA's office hosted line, and then the option 2 is a collaboration between 211 and the DA. What we'd like to call special consideration 2 is the call volume, the infrastructure that would need to be built to accommodate either one of these, the estimated timeline of when you'd like these services to become available, and the projected costs. For the education campaign, we are looking at the expanded model of the We All Play a Role that was successfully used by the Public Health Department to address community violence. Some key strategies for this is to have a tangible call to action, that it have very clear messaging, that it be data-driven, and that the distribution be specified. And so again, key considerations here is the timeline, the scope of reach, and the projected cost. With that, we are happy to take any questions, and we also acknowledge that what we have here also aligns very well, very nicely with the presentation just concluded by Dr. Wong Lau. And again, open to any questions from the group.
Maribel, could you put that last slide back up just for a moment?
Certainly.
Thank you. Colleagues, I know actually the next one, I'm sorry, the one that just shows the very last slide. I'm sorry, that was up, the blue one. That one, perfect. Colleagues, I just wanted to share this with you because when we talk about the Division of Equity and Social Justice in the county, you can see the offices that are a part of it: the Office of Cultural Competency, the Office of Gender-Based Violence, the Office of Immigrant Relations, the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement, and the Office of Women's Policy. I just wanted to share that with you because what will also be added to this in the near future is our Office of Disability Affairs, which I'm very excited about. And I don't know what its name is going to be, but I'm just putting that out there as a point. And I wanted you all to understand that as we're having conversations about the how we proceed, that we actually do have a network of a team, so to speak, that will be leading and assisting in this work. So with that, I'm going to go back to see if there's anybody from the public who would like to speak on items 4 or 5. I see no raised hands, so I'm going to come back to the committee to get thoughts about what we've heard about in both 4 and 5 and be able to both respond to questions and then move forward. Just colleagues, just as a point of order, there are a subset of these activities. The reason I wanted the staff to bring this to you, item 5 to you, is because this committee and Supervisor Lee and I are able to take the work of the committee and bring it directly to the board. And so the work under item 5, based on feedback we get from you, we'll make a determination about how to do that. Supervisor Lee and I also brought forward, in partnership with the district attorney's office and with input from co-chair Esparza's office, an approach to how we want to address the ghost gun issue as well. And that is those elements, we're going to take pieces that are ready and move them directly to the primary agency. So we're not waiting, until every item is addressed, but that we're able to move forward more quickly. So I'll then, I wanted to see, Samina, did you want to start in this area? I saw you had your hand up earlier.
Regarding item number 6?
Well, items 4 or 5. I know.
Oh, no, I'd only wanted to, for item 6, please. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, Ruth and then Michelle.
Yes. I did want to flag the fact that I supervise the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement legal advice line, and we have attorneys who speak English. I do the English, but we have 2 Spanish, Tagalog, Vietnamese, and Mandarin, Visayan. And even though if you do set up a separate line at the DA's office or whatever, I do believe a lot of the calls or some of the calls may be routed to us through 211. So we'd like to be able to collaborate with that line to make sure. And there may be some cross reference because there may be an UNRRA Civil Rights Act claim, or some other kind of claim that we might be able to bring in addition to any criminal prosecution.
Thank you, Ruth. That's very helpful. Michelle?
First, I want to thank the Research Foundation for all the work that they did. Also, the ongoing need for representation of disability. And Cindy, I'm excited as we continue to move towards the Office of Disability to be included in the equity umbrella. The one issue I have with the report is a common issue, which pertains to a statistic used for people with disabilities in Santa Clara County. We need to start to recognize that the census statistics do not accurately reflect the presence of people with disabilities in this county. And hopefully eventually we'll shift away from that to a more comprehensive demographic within that. Because when we say that there's only 4% or 5% or 6% people with disabilities that are adults in a certain age range, we tend to underestimate the presence and the prevalence of disability in our communities because they're not recorded consistently. So if there's some way to clarify that, oftentimes it's clarified just simply with a thing that states this statistic is not comprehensive and may be misleading. So I think that's an important reality that we need to start to consider. But other than that, thank you all for the work.
That's excellent feedback. Any other concerns, ideas, or issues that anybody wants to raise as to these items? Supervisor Lee?
Thank you, Chair Chavez. One question I have is regarding on item number 4 on the report. We see that the hate crimes being reported in San Jose, in particular, because the cases were so high. Do we have any statistics? How many of those 101 suspects were actually apprehended? And do we know what happened as a result of those charges?
Elle, were you able to understand that question?
I had some difficulty in hearing, but I wouldn't have the statistics prepared today to respond. I think it was related to the number of persons arrested for hate crimes in San Jose, and maybe he can clarify his question.
Right, yeah. So
whether or not it was prosecuted.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. On the report, it mentioned that there were 101 suspects that were apprehended. So I would certainly like to see if there's something maybe an off agenda or coming next meeting and come back to numbers of how many of those exactly what's the result of those? Were they released or how many of them actually got charged? That would be helpful to know on our DA's ability to help put these to get charged up. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if our district attorney partners on the team here might have some anecdotal percentages as to the filings related to those 101, but I certainly could try to drill down on that for the next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Just a couple things, colleagues, if there are no comments on the overall item, I do want to say how much I appreciate the work done by the Research Foundation and Dr. Wong Lau. You've been just a really all-in partner, and just really appreciate your commitment to the project. And we asked you to do a lot and do it quickly. And thank you for that. And colleagues, here's what I am going to propose as we move forward.
Before you go on, I'm working from my phone and I'm not able to raise my hand. So
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
Okay. First, I wanted to say I'm very impressed by this document, and it's. I certainly hope it gets a lot of attention and doesn't become one of those mini reports that we all know about that just sits on a shelf. So having said that very positive thing, I'm going to make a couple of other comments, but I don't want them to be as negative towards the whole thing. One is in recommendation 4.1.6 concerning the restorative justice pilot project. there are two documents that anybody who's trying to do a restorative justice project that includes restorative justice for hate crimes, even if it's not limited to that, absolutely need to look at. One is the Stanford Law Brennan Center study or report on alternatives to incarceration and so forth that looks very seriously at restorative justice and doesn't have all the answers, but certainly asks a lot of the right questions. And one of the difficulties that it points out for restorative justice as to hate crimes in particular is that a hate crime has two classes of victims. One is the legal class of victims, the people who are actually assaulted or victimized, and the other is the community of which they're part, who are traumatized by the attacks, which is the purpose of many of the attacks and the effect of practically all of them. And in fact, California law, in talking about restorative justice for hate crimes, specifically mentions restorative justice for the immediate victims and their communities. So that's going to be a difficult part of the restorative justice, because a core principle of restorative justice is the agreement of the perpetrator and the victim. And how do we get agreement of the victim when the victim is the whole community? That's something that needs to be considered. Secondly, on page 23, concerning the AB 1094 pilot project for data collection and pilot for sexual orientation and gender identity, I think that one of the groups of people who should be consulted in such data gathering is emergency room personnel. They're the ones who see a lot of these cases before anybody else does, and they should be helpful in data gathering. Finally, see what's the other one here. I hope that well, okay, I should say, I'm disappointed that the recommendation does not include one of the things that the task force and the board recommended to law enforcement agencies, which was that all of them consult their local communities in developing and expanding their existing or new hate crimes policies. In the disability community, we have a saying that I think other communities have started to adopt too, and I'm glad to see, which is nothing about us without us. And I think law enforcement agencies need to consult the communities that are targeted for hate crimes. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that feedback. I'll go around and see if there are any other colleagues before I kind of lay out some next steps. Sonia?
Thank you, Supervisor Chavez. One thing I just wanted to propose, in addition to all the other recommendations, is under the Tribal Law Enforcement Act, there is sections in that federal legislation around coordination and communication with local law enforcement to ensure that crimes against American Indians are addressed and are coordinated with the existing law enforcement at the tribes. And so I think it would be really helpful if we had a little bit more distinction around that law and how it can collaborate, coordinate, and reinforce the crimes that we've been facing as well. As you know, even my clinic has been a target of hate crimes since the pandemic has started. And I really think this is an opportunity for us to expand that relationship with tribal governments and their law enforcement agencies in relationship to hate crimes. As you know, we also have had a long history of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Again, another opportunity for us to address those issues going forward. One area under the U.S. Department of Justice Indian Country Investigations and Prosecutions report talks about that relationship and that ongoing need to have a specific Office of Tribal Affairs at local governments. And so as you stated, all the other offices that would be in place and working on this issue, I guess my next thing would be to recommend a Tribal Affairs office as well. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sonia. And I will commit to taking a look at that and talking to you more about it if it's okay, because I would like to talk, to a broad a group of the community to talk about what that would look like.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Maha?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. I want to respond to there was a request to add a Hindu network resource for education and training. And I actually agree that we're only highlighting Jewish and Muslim, and that's backed up by the rate of hate crimes and hate incidences against these two communities, which are extremely high right now. Muslims don't report to the FBI or to law enforcement, as frequently as the Jewish community does, but the rates are there. They're incredibly high, just even based on my own experiences walking in public spaces. But I'm wondering if there's room to add, a Hindu network resource for education and training, a Black American network resource for education and training, and so forth, because these are not the only two communities that are impacted by hate crimes or incidences. What's your thought about that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense, actually, and I think that one challenge and opportunity that we have in our community is that as we have new communities arriving, we have these. I feel like every new community runs up against the communities that are here already, saying, who are you and why are you in my space? And so in some ways, Maha, the thing that you're saying makes a ton of sense in terms of it being a sort of a best practice to dive deep into all the communities that we have here and really working with the community to better understand the issues as they see them. And I'll tell you, like, since I've been in office, the number of communities that have come forward thinking a lot about how to be present in their environments is significant, and wanting to be part of that education. And I think I want to go back to the point that that Greg raised, was this nothing about us without us kind of approach. So I like the idea a lot, and we'll take a look at how to do that. Thank you. Kathleen?
Yes, I just wanted to respond to, I think, all these wonderful feedback. One of the priority items, as you may recall, are communities of practice, right? And those are set up thematically. One of the benefits of a community of practice is that it brings in people from all different sectors, including private business, healthcare, law enforcement, public education, tech companies, et cetera. So that they are there in more than just like one session, but it's a community of practice where they have several sessions where they're getting people up to speed. And the people who populate the so-called facilitators and experts are actually people from the community. So you could have one that is on tribal relations and missing and murdered Indigenous women, for example, as a learning community, right? But it's a community of practice so that people can figure out, what does that mean for me as an HR person, for example, over in a company and that sort of thing. And so the reasons why the Muslim and Jewish ones were singled out is because I think there's already somewhat existing networks of people that are going around doing this kind of training. Like Maha's mentioned them. I think I know other people who have, and so those can be strengthened, but it doesn't mean that we can't do a community of practice also for those groups or for Hindus and other groups. And so that's a capacity issue. But if you partner maybe with different universities, imagine some of those sessions could be held on university campuses or facilitated by university campuses for certificates or for whatever it is, right? So sometimes universities have, or higher ed has that capacity to do that. Along with their student success centers and different student cultural centers might be able to help with those too. So I just want to expand that communities of practice thing could be one where the task force decides what are the priority groups for the first year. You could have a schedule, right?
Yeah, except what I would just say is I think the one little piece of feedback I want to give is I do think we want to find the communities that are reaching out, and again, to be responsive to the communities. So but I get what you're saying is that I think the prioritizations that I'm really looking at are from the community. But thank you for that, as always. Nirveer?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Just want to go back to Maha's point. I represent the local Sikh community. I have been to a few cultural competency training sessions with Maha at different venues. So we should broaden the umbrella and have representation from not only the Sikh community, but also other communities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leland?
Yes, I'd like to back up on that recommendation on 412. Totally in favor of the restorative justice. It sounds like a victor offender type dialogue format. This would be something we in the detention ministry would really welcome. We know that in some cases, the guys I work with, they're on parole and they're not allowed. They're straightened out their life. They've had communications at court with their victim, yet the parole states that if he makes any contact with this guy afterwards, they can throw him back in jail for this. And so a victim offender dialogue would be great to relieve that for the ones who are serious about, in this guy's case, it was, he cleaned up his life, and the victim recognized it. And they only had a moment, and he's not able to go back and talk with this guy at all without being persecuted or thrown in jail for it. So I am for this solution of a victim offender. If I've got this right, a victim offender dialogue, I think that would be outstanding. Working in the detention ministry is difficult because we have so many. There's so many obstacles that we have to hurdle over constantly. We're just getting in to see people nowadays is very difficult. So if we had something that was a direct, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, a consistent pathway that we could get with victims and offenders, that they can meet together. This would be very fruitful, I think. So I do like this solution here. So I just want to say that. All right.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or thoughts that folks have? So you all have given us a lot to chew on, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to work. Oh, Kavita, did you want to weigh in? I saw your hand up and down, and I don't know if I took your hand down on accident.
Oh
so.
no, I took it down, but I'll just say very, very briefly. I just wanted to add to the positive comments and praise for the really thorough report, but also add that I noticed a set of really thorough recommendations relating to work on ghost guns. And I just wanted to mention that last fall, the County Counsel's Office and the District Attorney's Office partnered on submitting a public comment in support of the federal ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, has proposed a new rule that would federally regulate ghost gun assembly parts, essentially, which has not been the case federally. And so we've jointly supported that, which is an effort I think both of our offices are really proud of.
Thank you. What you probably saw in the packet, just to reiterate, is a joint memorandum from Co-Chair Esparza, Supervisor Lee, the District Attorney, and myself. We'll be bringing a recommendation relative to ghost guns to the board on March 8th. We wanted to make sure we showed it to the committee because really the research that was done, that has been done both in the report and that others have done, really demonstrates that ghost guns are a key tool used to terrorize communities. So we'll be bringing that forward on March 8th and wanted to share that with you. The second thing is that the board, again, through Supervisor Lee and I, will bring forward the recommendation that our staff has as part of item 5, and we'll shape all of these based on the feedback that we get from all of you. we will be then bringing forward a set of recommendations to the county. But one thing I'm going to ask our staff to do is take the recommendations that are in the document, break them down a little bit along with who the recommended partner should be, because the county is just one entity. You know, the police forces are different and they work for each city. And we really want, I think, buy-in from all of the cities in terms of how we're going to move forward and get a little more engagement. And I'm glad, like Mariko's here from the Cities Association. One of the things that either both Maya and I or one of us could go to the Cities Association, share the recommendations with them and get their imprimatur as well. Because as you all know, we're dealing with many, many different departments. So, you know, having some shared approaches are going to be critical. And I think the DA's office can be incredibly helpful in helping us unify the police agencies in the cities as an example. So what I would want to do is bring back through the committee recommendations of the partners. And what I'm going to ask my staff to do is send it out to you, because my expectation is going to be from all of you to see who's missing. Because what we should be doing is saying, here's what the county is going to be evaluating or acting on. You know, it'll depend on the action. And here's who we're recommending should be part of the discussion, or the other agencies that we want to send the recommendations to, because we want those agencies to take a leadership role in those as well. And I see Margaret also, and I know we have some council members on and some of our nonprofit partners that, again, all of us have a role to play. Let me just see from my team, does that make sense? Because there are lists here, but I feel like we need to be much deeper and be more deliberate in terms of who we invite. There's some that we're going to ask the County Office of Ed to play a leadership role in. You know, all of them have a different level of government. Any concerns about that approach? Does that sound like an okay way to go? Okay, but the homework is going to be for all of you who needs to be at the table. And like Sonia, I really appreciated what you raised today, because it just wasn't on my radar, but we'll get it on our radar. Okay, so with that, we're going to receive those reports, and I'm going to, with the comments, I don't think we need to take action on them because we've received them. We're going to give a little direction. Again, I want to say to San Jose State and Dr. Wong Lau, if we can just give you a big round of applause and say thank you for both the thorough report, all the meetings, and to each of you who participated in them. Really, really appreciate it. We're going to move now to item 6. Susan, did you want to speak on this item that we just spoke on?
No, that was a mistake. I clicked on something.
No problem. I do that all the time. Okay. So with that, we're going to move to item 6 to discuss the review of text of a county resolution to support Assembly Bill 1947. And Richard Conda and Greg, we're going to report on this. Samina needs to leave. May I let Samina speak and then turn it to you, Richard?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My sincere apologies for jumping ahead. I am a little late for another meeting, but I really appreciate that the county is considering its resolution in support of AB 1947. I think it's incredibly important. I mean, one of the problems oftentimes with many communities is that either they have hesitancy to report hate crimes, or when they do report it, it's not being recorded as such. And so this bill would help to fill in that gap in order to record hate crimes properly, so that we can get an accurate picture of what is happening in the community and get the resources that are truly necessary for such, in the case of hate crimes. So again, I hope that you can support this. Again, I'm with CARE San Francisco Bay Area, and we are listed as one of the supporters of this bill, and we hope that the county will as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samina. And then Richard.
Supervisor Chavez, Supervisor Lee, Council Member Esparza, and members of the task force. I'm Richard Conda, Executive Director of the Asian Law Alliance, and I want to speak to you about AB 1947, the Freedom from Hate Crimes Bill. The initial resolution to support AB 1947 that was part of the packet has been revised with a supplemental resolution with one clarifying amendment. We would like this task force to support the supplemental resolution and forward it to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration. In 2018, the state auditor found that law enforcement did not adequately identify, report, or respond to hate crimes. The auditor recommended in 2018 that each law enforcement agency adopt a hate crimes policy, including specific protocols for recognizing, reporting, and responding to these crimes. AB 1947, introduced by Assembly members Ting and Bloom, follows the auditor's recommendation by requiring that each law enforcement agency adopt a detailed, specific policy instructing officers on how to identify, respond to, and report hate crimes. AB 1947 includes the use of supplemental hate crime report forms to investigate suspected hate crimes on the scene. These forms were also recommended by the state auditor and have been successfully utilized in Los Angeles, where the police department uses forms that it developed based on community input. AB 1947 requires law enforcement agencies to submit their hate crimes policies, brochures, and training schedules to the Department of Justice to ensure compliance. Asian Law Alliance is one of the sponsors of AB 1947, along with other statewide groups. Locally, AB 1947 is supported by the San Jose Silicon Valley NAACP chapter, the San Jose Japanese American Citizens League, the Islamic Networks Group, Siren, Lead Filipino, as you know, CARE, SF Bay Area, Korean American Community Services, Hindu American Foundation, Cambodian Women's Association, and the Vietnamese American Roundtable. Greg Yagir from the ARC and United Cerebral Palsy Collaborative would like to add his comments at this time. Thank you very much.
I think Richard is very thorough. I'll just say that the ARC and United Cerebral Palsy California Collaboration is also one of the sponsors. And I'll leave it at that, and I'm available to answer questions.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to hear from Ruth and then Lee. I mean, Otto, sorry, Otto.
Yes, I'd like to second what Richard Conda said, but I'd also like to point out that as part of the Human Trafficking Coalition, I had the opportunity to see the post and the local post trainings for human trafficking, domestic violence, and hate crimes. And I'd like to praise the post for the human trafficking and domestic violence one. But I'd like to say that the hate crimes one was really, it left much to be desired. It just had 3 people coming up and saying, of different ethnicities, and saying, I was a victim of a hate crime, unlike domestic violence and trafficking, that really explained in great detail what it was and did a really admirable job. So I would say that along with this legislation, if you could revisit, if the police department and post could revisit the hate crime, and it was about 6 or 7 months ago that I saw it, so it may have been updated, but I would hope that, I think that's very important, that the training be provided, and these videos are the primary source of training.
Thank you, Ruth. Otto and then Jay.
Yeah, thank you. This past year in 2021, there's been a 340+% increase in anti-Asian hate crimes.
Otto, we're having a difficult time hearing you. Can you perhaps lean in a little bit, or?
Sure.
Pardon me, Madam Chair. I apologize for the interruption. Supervisor Lee, is your laptop lifted up? That might open your microphone up a little bit better.
Actually, I'm using a desktop with a very fancy mic, so I'm surprised it's not working.
Okay, my apologies.
Is this a little better now?
It is.
Okay,
sorry,
good.
it's so fancy. You have to
I'm sorry,
lean
my
in.
bad.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just saying that we have over 342% increase in anti-Asian hate crime in 2021. And as we know, if AB 1947 is passed, that would mandate every law enforcement agency in the state of California to adopt a hate crime policy with protocols and reporting mechanism. And of course, the hate crime training for all of our officers. This work is absolutely crucial in combating hate in our community. And of course, everyone deserves to be safe in the community that we call home. So I'm very proud to support this resolution, certainly calling all of our state legislators to support this as well, and really want to congratulate Assembly Member King for leading this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Otto. Jay?
Thank you, Supervisor Chavez. I have actually spent some time doing a deep dive into Assemblymember Ting's Bill 1947. And I'm really confused by it. And there's a lot of it that I don't understand as someone that is an expert in hate crimes legislation. And that gives me pause from the perspective of a prosecutor. I do want to quickly say everything that Richard Conda said and Supervisor Lee said, I completely agree with, and I strongly support more and better training, more accountability on the part of law enforcement agencies in terms of record keeping and reporting, and very strongly support any type of legislation which will get law enforcement agencies to be more motivated in their recognition of what may be a hate incident. And because I'm aware that in primarily other parts of California, I don't want to be chauvinistic and say how great Santa Clara is, but I think we are a bit ahead of the curve in Santa Clara County and in the Bay Area. There are parts of California where there is just still so much to be desired in terms of recognizing hate incidents. So I wanted to make that point really clearly, but it looks as though this bill was introduced about a month ago, and going to leginfo.ca.gov, there hasn't been any analysis of this bill yet by any of the public safety committees. There hasn't been any input formally about this piece of legislation. And I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but I have some concerns about it broadening the definition of hate crimes to potentially include, for example, quote unquote, journalists. So I just wanted to raise those concerns for the task force while being absolutely clear that as the representative of the DA's office, strongly support the intentions, as I understand the intentions to be behind this bill. I hope those comments are understood, and I hope they came across with the tone with which I'm struggling to convey those comments, but those are my comments.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments from anyone? I'm going to go to the public real quick, see if we have any folks from the public who'd like to speak on this.
And Mrs. Gregg, I do have some responses when you get to the.
Thank you, Greg. I'll come to you next. And I see none, so I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this, and I'll go to you, Greg.
Concerning the earlier comment about the post-hate crimes training, I think what you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, is a short video that Post did that it just had 6 or 7 people briefly talking about their experiences of having been victims of hate crimes. Is that what you're speaking of?
You know, that was Ruth Silvertobe, and I don't know, Ruth, if you want to respond to that.
Could you repeat the question?
Okay, I think that the hate crimes, the post-hate crimes video that you're talking about was a fairly short one that just had 5 or 6 people each briefly talking about their own experiences being hate crimes victims. Is that?
Yeah, it was basically, they didn't even talk about it. It just different people of different races walked up and said, I am the victim of a hate crime. I am the victim of a hate crime. It was very skimpy compared to the other 2, which were very detailed. Yes. Has it been changed?
No, but that's not the hate crimes training. That was what Post calls a did you know, which is kind of a teaser to get officers interested. The actual training itself is much more like the others that you saw, and much more detailed. And
so the person probably picked the wrong one because he showed me 3 of them and he probably thought that was the one. Well, that's good to know. I mean, I think we all would like to see the latest hate crime post video
Yeah.
if possible.
It's pretty good, and their policy that would be mandated by this bill is pretty good. It could be better, but it's better than what most agencies, quite a bit better than what most agencies have now. And the bill does require them to update it, to revise it, to include all the stuff from in the policy. Concerning the comment about the last comment about expanding the definition of hate crime, we've been very careful not to expand the definition of hate crime or any other crime, or to increase penalties. That the reference to journalists that you're referring to has to do with the existing provision that officers need to be trained to recognize what it calls multi-mission criminal extremism, which is the nexus between hate crimes, anti-government extremist crimes, and anti-homeless crimes, anti-reproductive rights crimes. And this bill adds anti-journalism crimes, but it doesn't criminalize anything that's not criminalized now. It's just recognizing the problem of these extremist crimes. And I don't know what other provisions of the bill you have any concerns about, but the sponsors and Mr. Ting are very open to considering comments. In fact, we've gotten several that we're considering already, and would love to hear from you about them. And you're concerned about when the first hearing is, and which will be part of the analysis. The first, which will spark the analysis. First hearing is March 15th, and comments for the analysis are due 1 week before that. So this is a very timely resolution.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to, can I just jump in and say that I think it's incredibly important for the county's DA to support this in spirit, in in principle. This bill is going to go through an analysis regardless of what we do. And those issues are going to be fleshed out and distilled, and the final bill will be the one that actually goes through. But as far as the need for this, it's absolutely necessary. And like Greg, I'm an advisor to Post, and and Nancy. I noticed Nancy's on here as well. The three of us are usually working with Post on these issues, and they do a great job, and they constantly update these Post trainings. And so. Yeah, so I'm sure they'll come up with even a better.
Thank you. Is there any other comments? No. Here's a question that I have, and this is kind of a broad question from a timing perspective, or a recommendation that I have. I think that what you just said is that there's a conceptual agreement that we want to have training across the state, and that we want to see all agencies appropriately track their interactions and do that in a broad way. And I think there's agreement on that. I think what you're saying is the application of those broad policies, like how those get operationalized and how functional they are, DA to DA and police agency to police agency. Am I accurate that that's where the disconnect is?
I couldn't have said it any better, Supervisor.
So here, and I do know in the bill process, there's a lot of iterations to every bill. I think we know that what we start with isn't always where we end up. And I see some veterans on here who've done that with the bill, and all that. Anyway, so here's what I want to recommend. I think the resolution itself, I have two of them in my packet, and I'm not sure which one I should be looking at. And actually, Richard, can you tell me
It's the supplemental one that came out later. So it would be the.
Oh, got it. So there's this would be the revised.
That's correct.
And what are the changes in it? Because they're not stricken out or anything, so I'm not sure I know.
I can answer that if you want.
Thanks, Greg.
The only change was to clarify the accountability provision that Richard talked about, that every law enforcement agency will have to submit their hate crimes policies to the Department of Justice for review to ensure that they comply with the law.
Okay, so here's what I would like to recommend is that, and Otto, I'm gonna look at you on this because this would be really you and I. I think what I would feel comfortable with is recommending support and fleshing out the issues of application so that we're saying yes, and we want to make sure that these can be appropriately legally applied throughout the state. And what the reason I'm suggesting that is that I think we both want to be supportive in concept, but recognize that we want to make sure this is extremely operational at a local level because we want the data to be good, we want the training to be good, we want the engagement with our law enforcement as we're going through this process to be strong enough that it's something that can be operationalized. Because I think in the end, that's what we all want to see. How does that sound to folks? Because what that would mean is that we would be giving direction to our lobbyists, we'd be sending our letters of support, but the support would say, we agree with the concepts, but here's some issues that we want to see worked out before the final bill. The reason that's important too is that when the board takes an action, we often do that where we say that we take a snapshot in time, here's the concept we're supporting, and that, and we always have, at least one of my colleagues says, I'm supporting the concept, but what the final bill looks like, we don't know now, that kind of thing. Does that sound okay with everyone? And I'll go to Maya and then Maha.
Thanks, Cindy. And I'm happy to bring something similar with those same comments because the city does that all the time as well when a bill is moving forward. And I'm happy to do the same for the city of San Jose.
Great, Maha and then Al.
I really want to hear from Greg and Richard about the impact of what you just said. My understanding is that this should be standardized. Otherwise,
the resolution should be standardized?
No, the operational aspects of this, because everything is based on how you operationalize a policy. And if we don't have a standard way of doing it, counties or cities can do whatever they want in terms of how they do it.
Oh, I'm not, let me just be clear, Maha. I wasn't intimating that we were going to customize it for 58 counties or 400 jurisdictions. That's not.
No. And yeah, I'm actually saying that perhaps the bill should include that language. Anyway, I'm really interested in Richard and Greg's comment about, because I don't do policy work enough to be able to understand the implication of what you just said. That's all.
Yeah, and Maha, I'm not sure what you just said, to be honest with you. So you're saying what?
I wanted to hear from Greg and Richard about the recommendation that you were making.
Oh, got it. Thank you. Richard, do you want to start or Greg?
Or Greg, go ahead.
Well, Supervisor, if I understand what you said, I think that's a good idea. I think what you're saying, and I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but if I am, I hope that you like them. That that the resolution should say the county supports the bill, and not but and also wants to work on any concerns that you might have about it, which is
the way. Yeah, Greg, the way the language would normally work for us is, we support the concept of X and Y. With the following revisions or recommendations. And the recommendations would be that it can be operationalized at a local level, that there are enough conversations so that it actually works. That's really what I think Jay was saying. And I think that's right. We want it to be something that works.
I would just say that if, just from the point of view of how it works in the legislature, if you say support in concept, then your name does not appear on the list of supporters. And I would like to see.
Well, I don't think it would be it's not in concept. What I'm saying is that support with, we do this often where we say we support with the following
Sure.
issues that we want to have addressed.
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah. All right, thank you. Al?
Supervisor, I just wanted to speak to your recommendation. As a law enforcement partner here, I think the language that you are proposing, I I think it's a good idea. I like the philosophy of the and, right? It's not an either or a but. And I would say, it is important to involve the affected stakeholders, right? To include law enforcement, because we want to be able to operationalize this, and that any and all legislation is thoughtful, right? Given to the end result that we are all trying to accomplish. So I just wanted to say I support the recommendation as you outlined it, and as some of our colleagues just outlined it, because at the end of the day, we don't want to be in a position to be unable to operationalize it. So I would support that recommendation.
Thank you. All right, so let me see, is there anybody else who wanted to speak on this? Nancy?
I think I'd know where the mute button is by now. Excuse me, I'm just a little confused. So are we voting on the resolution then, or are you just proposing that the county board of supervisors do something totally different?
I think if the way this is structured, it's a recommendation from, just look at that. This is, I mean, we're discussing and we can approve the text of the proposed resolution. It would come to the board, but what I would say is I'm not sure the resolution is negatively impacted by what I just said. And to be honest with you, I would need to look at the resolution a little more closely, but it would be the cover letter that's probably that would be significantly, not significantly different, but that would say what I just said about, making sure that it's something that's functional, that really can be utilized, and there's training and all the other issues that were raised earlier.
Supervisor Chavez, would you like me to just quickly address that question from a Brown Act or legal process standpoint?
Sure. I was frankly going to see if we can make a motion, but go ahead, Kavita.
Okay.
And then Nancy, I'm sorry, Nancy, I left you looking a little confused. So let me just say what my goal was. My goal was, if you all gave direction, this could frankly, go ahead, I'll let Kavita respond, and then I'll tell you what my thinking was.
Okay, I can be very quick. I just wanted to answer the question of, is the task force voting on the resolution? The answer to that is the task force is recommending a proposed resolution that the Board of Supervisors would consider adopting. The task force itself can't sign and approve a resolution.
Yeah, and Kavita, thank you for that.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, that's what I meant. So are we voting on the are we still voting on the resolution that was included?
Yes, that question. So what I was going to, Nancy,
included in the packet?
Yeah, what I was going to recommend is that I don't see a problem with the resolution, but I'm look forward if there is, or anybody has a concern about the resolution itself. What I was actually speaking to was the cover letter that goes with it, because for the most part, our colleagues don't adopt, they don't support every detail of a bill. It just because it changes so much, you don't know what it's going to look like, which is why we often put a cover letter that says, here are the things that we're looking, the outcomes we completely agree with. Here are some additions that we'd like to see in the bill, and that's what I would want to convey, so that we're conveying the outcomes that we want, along with making some recommendations about what we'd like to see in the final version of the bill.
Okay, at least now I'm following.
All right, thank you.
So
thank you, Lori, and then Jay.
So just a couple of comments. First of all, I would support the resolution asking the board to support it, but everyone knows that there's always amendments to it. Sometimes those amendments can actually move us from support to either making additional recommendations or to not support. So the county has a legislative person who will monitor any kind of changes that could potentially move the county's position. So I really agree with Supervisor Chavez. Here's the principles we like, here's how we'd like to see it enhanced, and then make sure that we support it in concept or support, knowing that we'll monitor all of the changes. I don't know if that helps.
It does, and actually I like the word enhanced. That's exactly where I was, that's the word I was missing. Word of the day, Lori, thank you, Sheriff. Jay?
Following up on what the sheriff said, I just think it's premature for this task force to recommend this bill because, as the sheriff said, items of legislation go through significant changes through the legislative process. And my point earlier when I talked about how recently this bill has been introduced isn't, I understand that the sponsors want as much support and recommendations as soon as the bill is introduced. However, there's a benefit in waiting until there is more analysis. And I've already identified a couple of the issues that the district attorney's office has with this bill. Again, not to disparage the intentions, but I've read the bill. I read all the hate crimes legislation over the past 3 decades. This one is so unfamiliar to me in some respects. I don't understand it. It's actually confusing to me. Again, I'll reiterate, the intentions, the policy, fully support that. But having only learned about this in the last couple of days and read about it, the district attorney's office could not support this piece of legislation as drafted. I truly am grateful for Mr. DeGear's asking for our specific input about what changes we would want. And we would have suggestions. We'd want to have further dialogue. It's with law enforcement groups, with all the other groups that are part of this task force. There seems to be, and I'm sorry if I'm coming across as one of those darn lawyers that's always drilling down on those dirty details, but I deal with the dirty details when it comes to working with law enforcement and deciding what we can and cannot prosecute, for example. So not to beat a dead horse, but I've read this bill. Of course, I'm in agreement with a piece of legislation that seeks to criminalize people that want to intimidate journalists or people that are quote unquote anti-government activists. But I'll just say, I think that those things are probably unconstitutional, despite whether we might want them to be constitutional or not. We won't know, we will have a better idea about this bill after the various committees in the legislature analyze it, which hasn't been done yet. If this task force, because I sense consensus over the intention behind this bill, if this task force is interested in having a subcommittee to look at this bill more closely, perhaps that's unnecessary, before we vote on a resolution on whether we are asking the full board to recommend this legislation, I think that might be a good idea. I'd be happy to serve. But as it stands now, I would not be able to support this resolution asking this committee to ask the board to support this piece of legislation because there's too much that is unknown, too much that is new to me, too much is confusing. It may be that all those concerns and issues are addressed once it's explained to me more or there's further dialogue. But as of today, I couldn't vote to support the resolution.
Thank you, Jay. Nancy?
Yeah, thank you for the conversation. And excuse me, ADL has vast, I know it sounds a little show-offy, but we have vast breadth and depth of expertise in all aspects of hate crime and hate crime legislation, and effective investigations, community relations, data tracking, etc. We take a keen interest in all hate crime related bills. We are still in the process of doing a deep dive review of this bill. We got it when it was introduced the last couple of weeks. This bill is novel to us in many ways. I don't think we've seen hate crime legislation that incorporates some of what this bill does incorporate. I want to echo what Jay Boharski from the DA's office has said in terms of the intent behind the bill and our desire as well to see legislation that would enhance training, for instance, and promote good law enforcement policies. But the bill as it is currently written is not something that we could just say, yes. We have questions and concerns. Several of them are constitutional, real First Amendment type questions that we have. So, you know, the bill was just introduced. It hasn't gone through any amendments. It hasn't gone through any legislative analyses. I'm sure people, we're happy to engage in discussions once we're ready, after we've thoroughly had done a substantive analysis of the bill. But even with the cover letter from the Board of Supervisors, and I confess that's something I'm not familiar with the practice of how you would do that, we wouldn't be comfortable supporting the resolution to bring it to the Board of Supervisors right now. And that's not to say, again, that's not to say, we don't support the intent and many of the aims of the bill, but we just think at this point it's premature, and consequently we're unable to support it.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Molly and then to Maya. And Molly's hand flew up and down. Thanks, Maya. Molly?
Thank you. I think clarity in the law is really important, and we just don't have that here. And if you have the district attorney's chief assistant saying he thinks that there are going to be unintended consequences from the way the bill is written, and I agree with him, then I think you got to hit pause and go back to the drawing board. So I don't see that it disadvantages this group to wait until there's a clearer, better version, with the understanding, of course, that this group supports the idea behind it. We just don't want to, we're trying to get away from incarcerating our way out of problems. And so I like the fact that this group is looking at multiple aspects of hate incidents, but the criminalization, when it isn't clear, always ends up locking people more people in jail. So I wanted to agree both with Nancy and with Jay. And I think we should hold off on any endorsement for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Maya, thanks for waiting.
Sure, yeah, no problem. I think that this dialogue has been really helpful. I think we all support the ideas put forward in this. And since the hearing and, there's more analysis being scheduled, what was it, next week, I think, or within the next 2 weeks, certainly. We as a body could review this and include that analysis in our next meeting, and then have that clarity at our next meeting to be able to move this forward. As we all know, bills moving forward, as you mentioned, Chair Chavez, that it's a process, and they undergo changes, and there are just many opportunities for input and hearings in this process. And I think this could certainly come back to us next month, where we could have a little bit more clarity then to put that forward. So that's an option.
Thank you. Maha?
I just want to make just sort of one of the final comments to this, and I really appreciate the conversation, and I really appreciate what Nancy and Jay have said about this. But I did want to note, for the public record, that 2 to 3 dozen civil rights organizations signed on to this, and they matter. They matter a great deal. The fact that they're putting their name on this, and the organization that I'm associated with is one of those 2 to 3 dozen organizations, and I think that speaks volumes. I appreciate very much that the DA is, what he said and what ADL has said, but I think we should also pay attention and take note of the fact that there are about 3 dozen civil rights organizations that have signed on. And I would love to learn more about what Nancy said about some of the problems when I look at the fact sheet. And again, I began by saying that I do not have experience in policy at all. That's not work that I've done. So I am sure, I'm sure I'm missing the nuance here, but when I read the fact sheet, I just don't see the problems that have been raised already by several people so far. So I don't know if Greg or Richard want to say something for the public record here, but it matters that, several dozen civil rights organizations have signed on.
Thank you, Maha. Jay?
I wanted to say, Maha, no one is more surprised than me to not be able to support this resolution, because when I read it on the agenda, I thought this is right up this force's alley, and we need to support this. And I thought, well, I ought to do a little more due diligence than that and just read the title. So I went to the fact sheet, which is 2 pages long. And what leaped out at me was all the organizations that are supporting it. Almost every single, not every single organization, as Nancy pointed out, but almost every single organization in this sphere supported it. No law enforcement, from what I could tell, however. And I thought, well, of course, the DA's office will want to support this, given this list of civil rights, anti-hate crime, anti-hate organizations. But then I decided to really do my job, and I went and I read the bill. And the bill is, as I said, the bill is confusing, it's long, there's a lot of things in the bill that aren't on the fact sheet. And I'll just give one example. I don't mean to. Enlarging the scope of what is covered by hate crimes is controversial, it's problematic, it's something we've discussed a lot. For example, there have been efforts in the legislature recently that police officers should be covered by hate crimes bills. Right? I think many of us on the committee are aware of that. Many people are opposed to that idea. There's another idea that people who are unhoused should be covered by hate crimes bills. Some people think that's a good idea. Other people, such as myself, think that that's a bad idea. And it's not because we think homelessness is a good thing. When I went and read the entire bill, there were things that were just confusing to me, and I don't want to get into the weeds. It's a very long bill. It's a very novel sort of bill, talking about multi-criminal organizations and tracking anti-government activists. Listen, one person's anti-government activist is another civil rights activist. These are red flags for me, and I just think it's premature. That's why the district attorney can't support the resolution at this time. And I would look forward to more dialogue. But really, when I read the fact sheet and I read the title, I was like, this is great, we're going to support it. When I read the actual bill, it was confusing to me. So thanks for letting me respond in detail to that.
Richard?
Just as a point of clarification, the main groups that have been pushing this bill forward with Assemblymember Ting's office specifically, we actually had a pretty long detailed meeting with the California Department of Justice and some of their key lawyers. And based on our conversations, we actually have several amendments. So I think probably the version you reviewed, Jay, is not going to be the version that's going to move forward, because we have developed quite a few amendments that clarify a lot of those things that seem to be confusing. And I apologize that that's not available at this time because it's still going through a process. But I think, we were looking for support on the concept, and, as the details kind of get worked out, things will change. And I think that's about all I need to say. I just would hope that the task force could consider moving this forward to the board.
So Richard, let me ask a question, just as a point of maybe strategy here. And Kavita, I want to say thank you for clearing up process, and I might need your help again on this. But let me ask this question. What does the group think about having an ad hoc group of you review where the bill is, in process? Because Richard, it sounds like the changes could have been somewhat dramatic from what we all have seen, and having an ad hoc group of our committee take responsibility for reviewing where the bill is, giving feedback to that. And we can do this in one of two ways. This can come back to us in April, or the ad hoc committee could make a recommendation to Supervisor Lee and I, and Supervisor Lee and I could bring it to the board as soon as the ad hoc committee has a comfort level that really does address some of the main concerns that have been raised today.
That would work for me.
Okay, because I think from Kavita, Mike, can we do that? That's why
Yes, you can do that. I will say that if it's an ad hoc committee that this group agrees is going to look further into the bill, then that ad hoc committee is potentially subject to the Brown Act. I can look at that a little bit more closely and
I
let
thought
your
ad
office
hoc
know,
was the
Supervisor.
opposite. I thought it was
Yeah,
like if the chair puts the committee together and it's ad hoc and time limited, I thought that was then it was not Brown acted and they could go to work and then surface something for the committee.
So that's right, as long as the membership is so if it's a very limited term membership, a small group, and it's composed solely of less than a quorum of this group, you're right. So it just kind of depends on.
We're going to do that.
Are we bringing? Okay, I was wondering if we were bringing additional people into the process.
No. We're gonna assign people here who spoke up. We're going to give assignments, and we're going to have it not exceed it would not exceed April 22nd, since we're meeting then. We're meeting on April 22nd, and that way, if the committee can come to a consensus that they inform Supervisor Lee and I, then we will communicate with the entire committee, send out whatever the revised bill is, along with the resolution, along with the letter. And we can't have a quorum of this group give us feedback, but that's how we would inform the group. And then we could agendize it either way for the April meeting. So either to tell you what happened at the board or to discuss it further. Is that comfortable for folks? I mean, it shouldn't be comfortable, but is that a good pathway this all feels uncomfortable, but is that a good pathway forward? Are people okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Great.
Do we have to make a motion, or
Kavita, do I need a motion, or can we just, since it's consensus? What's that?
It does not.
Okay, great. So then what I'm going to ask is, because we'll need a subset of the committee, I'm going to have Greg, Richard, Jay, any other volunteers, or I'll start choosing. Maha says no. I saw her. I don't know how you knew I was looking at you, but you saw me. Okay. Nancy, do you mind being on that? That would be great. Maya, do you want to participate?
No, actually, I was going to recommend that someone from the Chiefs Association or that we also have some additional law enforcement.
Yeah, we have somebody. We have a member here. We actually have a member of our committee who's not here today who we can assign because they weren't here. Actually, no, I'm just kidding.
There you go.
Lori, do you want to participate, or have your alternate participate?
Yeah, I would be happy to.
Right.
Also, or the chief's representative, if that person's not there. But I agree there should be law enforcement representation, because certainly in concept, I support it.
Got it. And Elle, do you want to? I don't want to put you on. I am kind of putting people on the spot. Here's what I'll do. Elle, if you could shoot me a note, let me know if you're interested. Lori, if you could, and then what I'll ask Kathy in my office to do is take the folks that we just identified, connect everybody via email, and support the meeting so that we can move forward. Is that all right with everyone? Kathy, you're good? All right.
Yes.
I just want to say, I thought this was a really important discussion, because we're balancing all the things we're trying to balance, right? Which is protecting people and protecting rights and addressing, the criminal justice reform. I mean, I think this just hits everything. So I really want to thank Greg and Richard both for bringing it forward and being so thoughtful in the shaping, and being willing to let us all get caught up. That's really helpful. And, that's how we learn. We learn from each other. So I appreciate all of you very much.
Can you, ready to be the convener of the ad hoc group?
Yes, Kathy in my office is going to be your support. Greg. So you got Kathy Trong. Great, thank you. All right, well, with that, we're gonna now move on to, I really thank you. This was our last item. We are gonna be adjourned. We're adjourning till April 22nd at 12 o'clock. And thank you all. Please have a good, safe.
No.
Nancy, go ahead.
If it's okay, totally off topic, and not off topic, but off the agenda. So this past weekend, a known loose group led by an individual out of Petaluma, and this group is one that ADL is long familiar with, organized what's now becoming a monthly coordinated multi-state mass flyering propaganda distribution. And this is a virulently anti-Semitic group at its core. They do a lot of different activities to try to get their propaganda out, but to keep things brief, this is one of them. They also, their members also expose just outright white supremacist beliefs. And they hit multiple locales and homes and streets and parks throughout California. And one of the communities that they hit was Palo Alto. We got many reports from concerned individuals who woke up to find these flyers, which were put in plastic baggies with rice, to weight them down so they wouldn't blow away, on their front doorstep and on their streets. And I just want to thank the Palo Alto PD for their strong show of support for the whole community, and in particular the Jewish community that was impacted. I want to thank the Palo Alto City Council for their vocal statement of support. And I want to thank the Santa Clara County Police Chiefs Association. I hope I got the name right, for also issuing a very strong public letter of support condemning this hate, and for the Jewish community and for all targeted communities. And the DA Jeff Rosen also signed that letter. ADL is doing, we have a webinar series called Fighting Hate from Home. And our next one is going to be on March 3rd at 11 a.m. And it is going to focus, unfortunately, on this group, which does this for attention. So, people need to know what's going on, and response strategies to these types of hate propaganda distributions. So I just want to say it was a tough weekend for the Jewish community, but we're really heartened by the support. And I just wanted to give that shout out to the Santa Clara officials here.
Thank you so much. And Nancy, thank you. I will just say, I know Kavita, this is not on the agenda, and so what I want to make sure that we do is add to our next agenda, and I'm saying this to Kathy Trong, that we should just have an announcement section so that we manage that appropriately. Thank you, Nancy. It's just, I'm mindful of the Brown Act. I always have lawyers looking at me. Kavita, I see your eyes.
My apologies.
Not at all. Not at all.
I just wanted to say thank you.
No, it was great news. It was great news. You just reminded me that I didn't have a space on the agenda. We'll take care of it. That's awesome.
And I can send anybody a link to sign up for the registration, or go on adl.org website.
Nancy, if you send that to our office, we'll get it out to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I will do that. Thank you. I'll send it to Kathy.
Yeah, and no, I so appreciate it. I apologize for not having that appropriate place on the agenda. That's my responsibility, my bad. All right, everyone. I want to say thank you again. Really good meeting. Appreciate all of you. Have a blessed, safe weekend. Be well.
Bye.
Bye.
Recording stopped.